Thank you, Jackson. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I've been developing an art project for the last 12 and a half years, the last 8 of which I've been using AI. And I'm going to attempt to take you through that journey in 20 minutes or less. So let's see how that goes. So I love luminous landscapes. I think a lot of people do. As an avid hiker, skier, traveler, I seek these special places out. And I've struggled for years to share with other people the experiences that I was having in these amazing places. This is part of being a social animal, is you want to share these powerful experiences with your species. And people have been trying to do that, as you can see, for a very, very long time. It turns out that to capture and convey adequately the power of special places requires coming up with images that are not just seen, but that make people feel and think. This is something even Peter Paul Rubens knew about landscape painting back in the early 1600s. It's not just a question of capturing and showing a visual. So when you look at the history of landscape painting, you find that there are some very strong clues as to how to get these feelings across and give people more of a fullness of that experience. The painters of the Hudson River School, which was founded by Thomas Cole, gave some clues as to how to do that. And part of what helped was that they did these paintings before cameras were really a thing. They painted the way they saw. This isn't even a very large painting. It's in the Chicago Art Institute. It's only about probably this big, but it's so immersive when you walk up to it. It feels like you can step right into it. Cole's protege, Frederick Church, was hugely successful at this, and he really got the power of presentation. This painting, The Heart of the Andes, is 10 feet wide, and when it debuted in 1859 as a single painting exhibition in New York City, 12,000 people over the course of 4 weeks paid admission just to see this one painting. So what I realized is if I'm going to have more success conveying the feeling that I was having in these landscape experiences, I would have to force my camera to see the world the way humans do, which is with a very wide field of view, both horizontally and vertically, with the ability to discern details in both dark and light areas, and of course with sharp eyes to be able to see high resolution everywhere you look. So about 12 and a half years ago, in front of this canyon in Utah, which was a very challenging situation, you're pointed into the sun, the sky was blown out, the shadows were deep dark, you couldn't get far enough back to take in this scene with a single exposure. After years of experimentation, on the spot, I came up with this XYZ photography idea, which it turned out I was not the first to do this. Technically they're called multi-row high dynamic range panoramas. But you get this, which was 60 photos stitched and blended together to give, I think, a better representation of what I actually experienced. And I spent the next 4 years refining that technique. And along the way, there were a number of surprises that came up from there. Let's talk about presentation again. It turns out that when you present these things at large scale, and especially backlit, you can really move people in a way that makes them feel good. I ended up having some success getting my large computational photography-based panoramas in a number of healthcare environments, senior living. This is an adult day health center in Half Moon Bay, where I live. So presentation really makes a difference, and this sort of approach can generally get people to feel the landscape. But what about landscapes that make you think? Well, it turns out that while I was experimenting and refining this photographic technique, there was this incredible revolution happening with AI. And then in the summer of 2015, how many of you people remember when Deep Dream came out? Excellent. Well, this software, which was really just a diagnostic hack that a Google engineer produced to kind of get a peek under the hood of what their image recognition AI was doing, when he started to output images, he saw that it could turn ordinary images into basically psychedelic nightmares. And for a summer, if you might remember, a lot of people had fun. It was a novelty. They went around taking their photos and turning them into these crazy scenes. Some of these results, these are not mine, were quite intriguing. But it gave me the idea that perhaps with a subtler touch, I could combine the computational photography techniques that I was developing with my landscape photography and this AI sort of paintbrush in a way that would maybe introduce a cognitive element to my images, not unlike what the painters of the 1800s did, starting with the proto-impressionism of J.M.W. Turner, and later the full-on impressionism of folks like Seurat and Cezanne and Monet. They started to reach a new level of expressiveness that really made people think about what they were seeing. If anyone ever went to the early Monet exhibition at the Legion of Honor, one thing you might have noticed is that in his early Impressionism, these paintings looked like photos from a distance. When you got up close, they were anything but, and it left you wondering how it all comes together, which gets you thinking about human vision and what's real anyway. So I really wanted to pursue this, but Deep Dream was a toy. It was a diagnostic hack. It could not work on 500 megapixel images like I was creating. But fortunately, when you live and work for decades in or near Silicon Valley, you get to know some really smart people. One of whom I worked with before, Joseph Smar, who was a principal engineer at Google, agreed to superscale Deep Dream for my purposes. And he recruited one of his best buddies, who's a VP at NVIDIA, super smart guy. I couldn't have found a better duo to help me with this. But it took them 4 months to basically break through all the roadblocks to the point where we got liftoff. And when that happened, this is something I thought would happen. I wasn't totally sure, but it did. It enabled this, what I call museum experience. This detail of this lake in Colorado in Rocky Mountain National Park, that's not a photo. It looks like a photo from a distance, but sure enough, when you look up close, it's this crazy scene. And that's not unlike the experience that I just explained to you about with looking at the Monets at the Legion of Honor. So NVIDIA caught wind of what I was doing, and in April of 2016, they commissioned me to do 3 large light boxes for the GPU Technology Conference. Was anyone at that event and remember seeing these? It was really kind of fun to see the reactions of people wondering, what are those? Are those screens? These were 8 by 16 foot light boxes that I continue to make to this day as dye sublimation prints, backlit or frontlit in very small editions, or in the case of the big ones, one-of-ones. So that was April 2016, and since then, I've created a substantial body of work that I'm going to take you through chronologically, showing you just a highlight from each of the thematic collections that I've created. This is the eye candy portion of the presentation, and I hope you enjoy. Starting with my first collection, Dreamscapes, a collaboration of nature, man, and machine. This is a scene at the Point Montero Lighthouse near Half Moon Bay. It's a 36-shot panorama that up close looks like that. And one thing I want to point out, since many of you are probably from the Bay Area, that there are a number of these around that you can actually see in person. I encourage you to do so. This one is in the Oceano Hotel in the harbor at Half Moon Bay. So if you're ever down that way, over by Barb's Fish Trap and all that, stop in at the hotel and you can see this in person. My next collection was called Dreamscapes 2, From Inner Space to Outer Space, where I experimented with using this technique on images from a variety of scales, from microscopic images that I got from a collaborator who was creating these incredible micro photographs of fossils and so on, all the way up to the Carina Nebula NASA picture that came out from the Hubble as part of their 17th anniversary. You know, the thing about this, we've been imagining creatures in the stars forever. That's why we have constellations. So I thought, why not? Let's go full literal on that and use the deepest layers of deep dream, which are very animalistic. And this is if that image was 8 feet high, this is just a 1 foot square to give you an idea of the detail that's in there. From there, a curator in Miami that I was working with at a gallery in Wynwood suggested that these 1 foot squares had really nice details, but she wanted to see them 40 inches or 4 feet in size. So I ended up doing a collection of upscale dreamscape details, and this is one example of those. I've got a ton of these. And then an art historian, notable curator in New York City caught wind of what I was doing, and he looked at one of my big panoramas of Central Park, and he said, you know, he basically challenged me to come up with as many curated details as I could from this single, I think it was a 42-shot panorama of Central Park, this being one of them. So that was Mining Nightfall. Then I did a series on bridges because I had a bunch of panoramas of images with bridges in them. This is the Bow Bridge in Central Park, and that's a detail of that scene. A version of this is in the Google office in Chelsea, New York City at 8th Avenue and 15th Street. As you see on the little subway there, this is in the subway lounge on the 4th floor. If anyone works at Google and ends up in the Chelsea office, you can see that, okay? Dreamscapes 4, a little ode to impressionism. I did a series, kind of real flowy sorts of stuff like this ocean scene. A version of that was shown last year, this time at my first solo show, which was in Half Moon Bay, as a 4 by 8 foot frontlit print, of which was an edition of 3, and 2 editions are still around. Then I had this idea that I could actually dream in multiple passes at multiple scales in multiple different styles. This is an example of that. It's dreamed at a large scale that from a distance is very readable. But when you get up close, there's this fine brushwork even closer in. This was exhibited as an 8 by 16 foot light box at the launch event for Stanford's Institute for Human-Centered AI. I was the sole artist invited back in 2019. This was a great day. I got to meet all sorts of tech heroes. Demis Hassabis in the lower right is the founder of DeepMind. Ed Feigenbaum next to him, Turing Award winner, Reid Hoffman, Marissa Mayer. It was a great day. This is another double dose dreamscape that I did right around the same week, and that is currently in the Google office here in San Francisco on Spear Street on the 7th floor. For anyone who knows anyone who works at Google, you can see it there. There's a detail of that. Then I sort of played around with other art movements, like this is my ode to cubism, a form of refracted dreaming, a series I called Infinite Dreams, Abstract Dreams, Dream Noir. This is my sort of homage to Frank Miller, the graphic novelist who did a lot of graphic novels in black and white and one color. Did a little series on that. Then this is the start of a series I plan to do next, which explores not just how landscapes are experienced, but actually how landscapes are remembered. This piece is called Fragmented Memories of Grasmere, and it's got multiple dreaming styles in this mosaic version. It's actually 3 panoramas shot from the same hillside at different elevations. And the randomization of the tiles is actually from a random number generator that's weather-based, which is kind of appropriate. As practice for my most recent collection, a very nice gallery in London came after me and said, hey, we love what you're doing. You should photograph the English landscape gardens that were designed by Capability Brown and his contemporaries back in the 1700s. We can't commission you to do that because we don't know how it's going to turn out, but if you pull it off, we'll give you a solo show in our Mayfair gallery. So in April, I went out to England to shoot, but before then, at Filoli Estate here in the Bay Area, I used Filoli as a way to practice and created this piece to run by them, kind of get a sense of what they were interested in. And this happens to be now a piece that's in the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, not to be confused with the Tech Museum in San Jose. So if you're ever down in Mountain View, the Computer History Museum, you can see this is part of their permanent collection. Which brings us to the most recent, so it worked out. I actually, in April, I went and shot up in around Oxford, England. It was the most stressful month of my life. I was there for a month. The weather was terrible. I only had 8 days to capture 10 properties and create 12 artworks. But when I showed them the results, this is the centerpiece. It's a 16-foot wide scene of Blenheim Palace, which is the birthplace of Winston Churchill, and some details. And this is a 6x6 foot frontlit print of Sheffield Park, which is one of my favorite pieces. If you look in the lower left, you see those people there. It's amazing to me how the AI doesn't want to lose detail because it's image recognition based. But it's got these very discernible people in this fantasy environment. It surprises and delights me, which is why I feel like it's a collaboration. So when I had these results, I went ahead and worked with a 3D graphics expert to simulate their gallery. The images that I'm going to show you here on the left were simulated by my friend in 3D in May this last year. And on the right are iPhone photos that I shot in October at the opening. So when they saw these simulations, they were like, yep, project approved in its totality, let's do this thing. So in October, we had the opening. It was definitely the high point of this journey so far. They're now my exclusive gallery, except for my pre-existing NFTs on various curated digital art platforms. But I'm working very closely with these guys now. They're an unbelievable gallery. And these are some scenes from the opening. That's it. Thank you.